The OCD and Anxiety Podcast by Robert James Coaching. Hello and welcome to the OCD and Anxiety Podcast, where we explore how to have a more positive relationship with anxiety disorders, taking back control so that you can start living the life you choose and not the one chosen by your fears. Hello and welcome to episode 365. I'm joined this morning by Bruno, my dog, who sat here keeping my feet warm, which is very nice of Bruno. And now, if you are struggling with OCD or anxiety and you would like to get a free session with me, well, you can get that by heading over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There you can book in for that free session directly, or if you prefer, you can send me a message and just let me know about what you're struggling with. In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about unraveling the knot of OCD without actually kind of physically undoing that knot. And what am I talking about here? Well, of course, getting over OCD involves this certain level of acceptance, a kind of consciousness that we move into where we are more willing to experience uncertainty, more willing to allow things to be, and we have more understanding that in order for OCD to kind of work itself out, we have to let go of constantly trying to fix it. And when we do that, almost like not trying to undo that knot, things do start to improve. So today I'll be talking about that. If you find the podcast helpful, it would be great if you could head over to Instagram and follow and like there. Also, the podcast is now on YouTube. So if you would like to head over to YouTube, subscribe there, like there, all that kind of stuff, that would also be amazing. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoy. And off we go. Underneath the relentless churning seas, there is actually a deep and profound calm that you can find by actually just learning how to go a little bit deeper within, to understand that on the surface of things, often our emotions are taken around by the storms, by the winds, by the rains. All sorts of things can happen when we're on the surface, when we are in the world and we're dealing with all of the problems and all of the things that come up and distract us and take our attention. It can be very challenging when we're caught up in an OCD crisis, when our obsessions are so strong that they're kind of taking our attention and we're feeling awful, feeling somewhat powerless. Feeling that we're not really able to direct our lives where we want them to go because, the flood of emotions that come with all of that obsessing and compulsing can be incredibly intense. And so often that we kind of forget that when we go a little bit deeper within, when we find the right resources, almost like going deeper down into the ocean where things are actually calm and still, we can do the same thing in ourselves. We can actually go deeper within ourselves through using tools like the breath, using things like meditation to be able to kind of calm everything down. Actually, what we begin to realize is, despite on a surface level that there's a lot of stress and anxiety and all sorts of things going on, deep down, there's this kind of observing self, this part of us that's unchanging, that's stable. And this is the kind of thing that we really need to learn to get more in touch with in order to kind of get over OCD. And really, that's kind of what I'm talking about today, in this idea of trying to undo this knot without actually undoing the knot. Really, what that is getting more in touch with that deeper sense of self that already knows what you need to do in order to untangle this mess. And I think this metaphor of a tangled knot, it really does explain OCD so well. We are doing our very best to try to figure it out, to try to understand it, to try to problem solve our way out of it. Inadvertently, all we're actually doing is creating this giant monkey knot. I'm sure you've seen one of those monkey knots. It almost ends up like a kind of fist. There's so many little knots in it. And, the more that we're trying to problem solve, unfortunately, it is like tying another knot into that monkey knot. It just gets us more and more stuck. And at the same time, more and more frustrated. We want to escape. We want to get out of that knot, but we can't. And the more upset we're getting, obviously, it's kind of like you're just pulling the ends of the rope on each end of that kind of knot, and you're just making it tighter and tighter. And this is the trap of OCD, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, you know that I was there myself for many, many years, and would spend far too much time pulling those ends of the knot and finding myself more and more stuck and getting so frustrated with myself, not realizing that self-compassion was important, acceptance was important, that I needed to actually let go of the kind of rope and actually just kind of learn how to accept those difficult emotions that were there on the surface. But of course, I didn't understand that at the time. I didn't want to do that at the time. I thought the only way to get myself out of this particular situation was just to work hard enough, to problem solve enough, and therefore I would find my way out. So it wasn't that I was lazy. It wasn't that, I wasn't interested in improving my situation. Unfortunately, at that time, I just didn't have the tools, and I didn't have the awareness. I didn't have the knowledge that I have today. And that's why, I really want to kind of share this with you, is I really would love it if other people who are struggling with OCD can apply these same things that have helped me so much, because, really OCD is an awful place to be. It can be incredibly frustrating at times. A lot of people don't understand it. They don't understand how it works and how, you may be trying really hard, trying your absolute best to solve it, only to find yourself more and more stuck. It's a really difficult place to be. And so understanding this kind of metaphor of, this monkey knot can be a really helpful kind of, emblem or kind of vision in the mind to understand what is going on when you're just ruminating or you're performing endless compulsions. Effectively, you are just tying more and more knots into this big monkey knot. So we have to find a way to actually let go. And as I was talking about before, when we let go and we really focus on kind of the tools of acceptance commitment therapy, for example, which in its essence is really learning how to come back more into the present moment, to observe difficult emotions and things that are happening, to observe our thoughts without getting quite so caught up in them, and then practicing coming back into the present moment by refocusing our attention onto our values and what matters most in that moment. And when we do this, we're no longer trying to untie that knot. We're no longer fighting with it, and we're no longer problem solving. Instead, we're just recognizing that we are in a bit of a knot in that moment. We are in a problem area, and we know that whatever we've been doing has actually just been making matters worse. And so what we do is we kind of hold up our hand. We recognize that, it's frustrating, but the things that we've been doing have actually been making the situation worse. And instead, we endeavor to make a new decision, take a new approach to dealing with the OCD. And, what that needs to be is actually to take that step back and to think about, okay, well, how can I get back into my life right now? In this moment, how can I let go of problem solving? How can I let go of looking for certainty right now? how can I just allow that anxiety to be there and refocus my attention onto something else? Because when we do that, although it's not going to necessarily completely solve the OCD, it does create headspace for ourselves. And almost like the namesake, the app Headspace, this is a kind of mindful based activity really that you're doing here. When we are mindful of our thoughts and our actions, and we recognize, okay, all of this obsessing and compulsing, it's making this not worse. I'm going to observe the urge to do that, but actually now I'm going to just do something different. I'm not going to allow myself to carry on with that behavior because I know what's going to happen if I keep on doing that. And really that is a kind of mindful approach that you're taking. You're beginning to create a bit more separation between yourself and your thoughts, and you're choosing to take action that's much more in line with the person that you want to be, in line with your values, rather than taking action that is all about trying to feel better immediately in terms of trying to get rid of difficult emotions or trying to get rid of fear and anxiety. And when we do this and we actually choose to keep on refocusing our attention onto other more helpful things, we let go of problem solving, it really gives us an opportunity to allow everything to settle down, to allow the thoughts to just calm down a little bit, to allow that OCD cycle that most probably you were caught up in to just also calm down a little bit. Everything just begins to settle when we do this. And so often, once we've allowed a certain amount of time to pass, enough time to pass, we come back to the problem and it doesn't quite seem so urgent anymore because you haven't been obsessing about it non-stop. Suddenly you're able to have a slightly better perspective on that issue. It may still be a bit frustrating, but the level of anxiety and the level of urgency that was there before is likely to have moved on and to have changed. And so, trying to deal with this kind of OCD monkey knot in this way is a much healthier kind of response to, the typical response that we all get caught up in, unfortunately, which is obviously just to try to problem solve it, get rid of it, find the solution as soon as possible because we're just tired of feeling bad and we just want to feel good immediately. When we take this other approach, where we're actually just being a bit more determined and a bit more actually compassionate with ourselves because, when we're caught up in kind of trying to get rid of our emotional states or, these obsessions straight away, well, actually, that's really not being compassionate with yourself whatsoever. When we allow difficult emotional states when they come up and we acknowledge them, and then we choose to refocus our attention onto more helpful things in our lives, our values. What tends to happen over time is you're kind of creating new circuits in the brain with neuroplasticity. We're beginning to learn how to refocus our attention, our energies away from trying to problem solve everything all the time and trying to have certainty all the time. Actually, and we're moving then towards a much healthier way of dealing with those kinds of things where we have more emotional flexibility. We acknowledge difficult emotions when they come up. We try to allow ourselves to feel them, but then we move our attention elsewhere to things that are actually really important to us in our life that perhaps we've been neglecting a little bit because the OCD has been so strong, so powerful. It's just been taking up so much of our consciousness, that we've just been trying to get rid of it all the time. And at the same time, perhaps we've been neglecting things in our lives that are really important to us, like our families or our friends or, even our work or different activities that you enjoy. And we know what happens when we do that. Unfortunately, we tend to get ourselves even more kind of stuck in that OCD trap. So, learning how to do this, learning how to let go of trying to fix that knot, in order for the knot to kind of work itself out in its own time is a really great strategy for kind of moving forward with OCD. It's something that's helped me a lot myself. So hopefully it might be helpful for you too. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed that. And I will see you next time. If you have any questions at all, do please let me know. Just a quick reminder that if you want to get a free session, all you need to do to get that is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com. And there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. And now just a quick reminder of my disclaimer. Any information that you view on my website, Instagram page, Facebook group, or anywhere else online, or any information that you listen to on the podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for actual medical or mental health advice from a doctor, psychologist, or any other medical or mental health professional.